So, actually making it worse for me as an autistic person with fucking Kallmann syndrome and growth hormone deficiency, in that simultaneous to have the swastika on them, or are we just happy enough with them having the communist symbol on them? It's like, know half the shit that was gonna happen. Like, I got diagnosed with Kallmann syndrome, and the way that happened, that right. Kallmann syndrome. Well, what is Kallmann syndrome? I mean, saying this is a
medical condition. It's Kallmann syndrome, but it's an idiopathic mutation, and essentially something has
about why, you know, white overweight guys with Kallmann syndrome deserve to get laid by pretty illness. It's an illness. You know what that says? That says that's like, I don't consider my Asperger's syndrome an illness. Getting a job, because even without my Kallmann syndrome, my low growth hormone, and my fucking autism, I have got a shit degree.
And I am getting medical treatment for my Kallmann syndrome, idiopathic genetic mutation, and I am getting...
Dad was gonna go. I did not know that I was gonna... that I did not know that I had Kallmann syndrome, and that I would have a fuck up your life. Nobody cares about delayed sleep disorder. Nobody cares about Kallmann syndrome. Nobody cares about syndrome. My immune system, thanks to my Kallmann syndrome and growth hormone deficiency, my immune system is weakened. And
so, middle ground of acceptable. Hey, I can't smell. Let me know. I have Asperger's syndrome, a kind of autism, which means...
I mean, I wish I had got my Kallmann syndrome sorted out earlier, so I could have, you know, made use of the fact that everybody... And the thing is that, for me, bearing in mind that, you know, obviously with Kallmann syndrome, I had less testosterone than the average woman.
Jahans, I am an autistic idiot. I'm a man with Kallmann syndrome, so that means I have tits and I cannot smell.
Gendered, right? I feel very shit about the fact that I've got Kallmann syndrome and the fact that I need testosterone injections, but it's not just Kallmann syndrome that is affecting my confidence. It's also, right, the reason I look fucked up is because of Kallmann syndrome and growth hormone deficiency. Not because of autism. Autism,
they come. I am as fucking white boy idiot as they come, you know. I've got Asperger's syndrome. I'm a Doctor Who fan, clearly. I
don't mind the fact that because of my sort of Kallmann syndrome and low growth hormone, I basically have to do a death, you know. For those of you who aren't aware, I've got Kallmann syndrome. That means that basically I was living my life dealing with Kallmann syndrome, dealing with an abusive father. Shit was okay. Autistic, Kallmann syndrome, growth hormone deficiency, being by and I don't actually think I can say that that's Asperger's syndrome there, or anything like that. I think
ironic. That really fucking is, because Kallmann syndrome, not fun. So yeah, like, should we get rid of royalty for? I think I'll call it Doctor Who Executive Producer Syndrome. Okay? The first...
what I'm going to say, because I'm going to continue saying what I'm going to say. So, yeah. What the fuck is Kallmann syndrome? I am a white cis man who has got, because of Kallmann syndrome, tits and a tiny cock and balls, which means that that's pretty much, you know, what getting diagnosed with Kallmann syndrome when you're when I'm not gonna react in a comfortable manner, okay? Because I do have Asperger's syndrome, right? And so there is no autistic pride day, no Kallmann syndrome pride day. There is no. Now, obviously, I've got this compounded by Kallmann syndrome and GHD, which means that, and also possible sleep. I mean, basically, okay, I'm a clueless fucking idiot. I have Asperger's syndrome. I can't talk to people. Because I've got Kallmann syndrome for basically the vast majority of my life, like literally up until 2 years ago. It does affect women as well. So many people with Kallmann syndrome don't a normal healthy human specimen. Well, I have Kallmann syndrome, which basically means that my pituitary gland is fucked up. My illness, okay. The reason I have the tits is because of something called Kallmann syndrome, which basically a man who has actually had a boyfriend and like, yeah, I've also got Kallmann syndrome, so, you know, I'm not trans. Well, I'm a fucking autistic virgin with Kallmann syndrome, who is stuck in the house in the middle of fucking nowhere being, like, Kallmann syndrome is so rarely known about. And my Kallmann syndrome and growth hormone deficiency means I can't do manual labour. University, and I changed my name to Gordon Jones because, unbeknownst to me at the time, Kallmann syndrome had basically fucked me up. I'm back! And it's like, when you've got Kallmann syndrome and you've got autism and growth hormone deficiency, and besides, I was more preoccupied with like Kallmann syndrome, right? Because Kallmann syndrome is the condition that I have noticed. I Wikipedia'd Kallmann syndrome, and it's like because of my autism and, you know, my Kallmann syndrome and growth hormone deficiency, like being cis, is that I have this thing called Kallmann syndrome, which basically means I can't smell, and the way my autism interacts with Kallmann syndrome and growth hormone deficiency, and with the fucking clings of snowflakes atop the iceberg of shit that landed on my head. I have Kallmann syndrome, which is because I'm fucking autistic, right? I've got Kallmann syndrome. If I ever had a kid, I would have to go through IVF, and I would basically see. I have a shorter lifespan anyway. And thanks to my Kallmann syndrome, I ain't gonna be having any kids anyway. Going through shit. I was going through tough shit, you know. Kallmann syndrome. Not great. Not fucking great thing to have, you know, being infertile, having... Because, yeah, yay, having Kallmann syndrome and growth hormone deficiency and not being able to work because you're too fucking tired all the type. But at the same time, I am someone with a condition called Kallmann syndrome, which means that therefore certain And so there is no Kallmann syndrome support group. No, there is no widely. That's just because of who I am, because of the things that I have, because Kallmann syndrome is a fucking bitch. But when you've got nothing, when you are less than a fucking man because of Kallmann syndrome, when you are really fucking starring feminist, former regulated capitalist, now techno-progressive with Kallmann syndrome, and I'm on the Asperger's syndrome spectrum. And welcome to growth hormone deficiency. I have low energy, and thanks to Kallmann syndrome, I am not the most well-endowed individual. So I am because of the alt-right. Not because of my YouTube channel, because of my Kallmann syndrome getting seen to, because of the fact that our pecs, right? This is essentially as a result of Kallmann syndrome causing my body to get confused. It's like it tried to go both ways, because thanks to my Kallmann syndrome, my immune system, thanks to my Kallmann syndrome and growth hormone deficiency, my immune system is...
Because tomorrow I get to see the doctor about my Kallmann syndrome, and hopefully I can begin treatment for that. You know, of autism. And autism is where you get like savants sort of thing. And Asperger's syndrome is itself a spectrum.
Essentially, I suppose you can look at Asperger's syndrome as kind of like an encryption algorithm, right? It's starring feminist, former regulated capitalist, now techno-progressive with Kallmann syndrome, and I'm on the Asperger's syndrome spectrum. Details of, you know, the Kallmann syndrome, if you decide to watch these videos where I'm incredibly honest about these things, Jahans, and yet when it comes to everything else about who I am Kallmann syndrome, I am autism, I am bisexual, is part of the issue. It is kind of, it's associated with Kallmann syndrome for me. Horrible. And then it's like Kallmann syndrome. If you're a guy, Kallmann syndrome, nosebleeds, Asperger's syndrome, Kallmann syndrome, growth hormone deficiency, piles, cataracts in your eyes. The latest video to the Kallmann syndrome and me video. Notice how there is a steady decline in views.
Is I have an unknown genetic mutation that causes Kallmann syndrome-like things, which...
I was not expecting to be diagnosed with Kallmann syndrome, to be diagnosed with growth hormone deficiency. Kind of tell, I've sort of made it through the worst of the Kallmann syndrome situations, and yeah, term is, you know, fertilized egg. Whether a fertilized egg with, you know, X chance of developing Kallmann syndrome or autism, you know, like, yeah, I'm autistic, I'm bisexual, I've got Kallmann syndrome and rhinitis and sleep apnea, are people who could understand what it was like to have Kallmann syndrome. I was wrong. If you have Kallmann syndrome, sexual characteristics. I have a cock and balls, but I have a condition called Kallmann syndrome. Basic disorder acceptance month or awareness month. Okay, Kallmann syndrome. No fucker knows about it, right? Because we will depressed and suicidal, and I've been dealing with, you know, Kallmann syndrome with this condition. I've been dealing with the fact that hell, you know, just, you know, Kallmann syndrome diagnosis, growth hormone deficiency diagnosis, and now I have got basically Kallmann syndrome, which means that I have fucked up genetics. I can't smell. My in the world. Also, I have Kallmann syndrome, So yeah, I have tits and I need testosterone injections. So
quite happy with how I look. And the tits are caused by Kallmann syndrome, not being fat.
Essentially what happened was that because of my Kallmann syndrome and GHD is that and a sort of an okay, what was your biggest regret? That my Kallmann syndrome wasn't noticed and treated earlier. I would also have to viewers, the man with the face that looks like the potato, and the autism, and the Kallmann syndrome, and the things, and the stuff, right? Inability to control emotions, which is to a certain extent, in my case, a factor of Asperger's syndrome, because Asperger's syndrome is to a certain extent, and that because my Kallmann syndrome, probably not going to have kids either. Well, there's also the fact that I was wrong. If you have Kallmann syndrome, if you're me with Kallmann syndrome, then when you look in the mirror, let's focus on like the other things. Like, yeah, Kallmann syndrome. I basically went from wondering, I've had a rough old year. I'm a cis male, but I have something called Kallmann syndrome. Basically, what that means is I have autistic virginal guy with Kallmann syndrome, like submissive women. I'm gonna, you know, things are not fucking amazing for me. I mean, I've got fucking Kallmann syndrome and Asperger's syndrome, and somewhat difficult because, of course, you know, people sleep in this house. And because of my Kallmann syndrome and growth hormone deficiency, probably damn sight fitter than me because he almost certainly doesn't have Kallmann syndrome and GHD. And B, he will have armed guards. I mean, admittedly, I've got more things that are weird because, like, literally, you know, Kallmann syndrome basically literally means but testosterone injections, Kallmann syndrome, it's sort of late 2014, early 2015, I had Kallmann syndrome. And it does not affect your physical characteristics. Right? It is not like Down syndrome. There is no autism face. And basically, all of this just comes with Kallmann syndrome and low growth hormone.